Starfield, Starfield, Starfield. This is Dapper Dog Plays, and this is my Starfield review after 176. I always was 176, but it's 170-ish hours with 40 out of 50 achievements attained on Steam, so yeah, I've been playing pretty hard. It's kind of been one of the first games in a long while to consume me. With that said, I do have a great many things to say, positive and negative, about Starfield and by extension, Bethesda games. But mostly just about Starfield, although I think Bethesda's created a pretty decent game here, but we'll get into my final assessment later. So today we will discuss the story, gameplay, aesthetics, and at the end go into more details about in-game and New Game Plus. And yes, this game has a New Game Plus system that is baked into the main story and central to the story in many ways. I'll try to avoid major spoilers when I can, though the last portion will probably be spoiler heavy, just to be clear. So there will be a warning when that's going to happen, and there will be chapters, so if you just want to click off at that point, you can. It's towards the end, so there you go. But I will be getting into some spoiler territory just to kind of explain my thoughts on the end game and everything else. Alright, well, with that said, let's go ahead and just get right into this.
Except with more cave-ins, lasers, and accidental dismemberment.
Very helpful.
We have a great deal to cover, so we're going to get right into it. The basic story of Starfield, the main story anyways, is one of tracking down artifacts. The game begins with you as a miner for a small mining outfit working for Constellation, the primary organization investigating the artifacts. All of the main companions come from Constellation, which has some knock-on effects for how they respond to your actions in-game. Even though it is said that you are free to do what you want, the companions tied to Constellation tend to be very moral and overall seek to avoid violence and exploiting people. Meaning if you decide to be a murder machine working for the Crimson Fleet, a pirate faction in the game, they're going to absolutely hate you. Which brings me to one of my first criticisms, that Constellation is a great group, but I can see how it can feel limiting to the player since all the main companions that have deep interactions from friendship to romance are all tied to the same group and have similar feelings on being an amoral jerk. The game needs deep characters that the player can bring with them that will support their more violent, or for lack of a better word, more evil playthroughs. Back to the story, the core adventure is actually pretty good, and varied from exploring abandoned mines and labs, to navigating the seedy underworld of Neon, to even exploring the ancient sites of Lost Earth and the Sol System. There's a common refrain that the story is a bit of a slower build-up, and with this I can agree. But it builds quickly once you've assembled a full team and starts seeing the player with tough choices and interesting revelations towards the middle and end of the story arc. I have also completed all the faction stories: UC Vanguard, Freestar Rangers, Ryujin Operative, and the Crimson Fleet. Each of those stories have accompanying Radiance-style quests that you can do during or after the quest lines are completed. The UC Vanguard quest line is focused on dealing with a dangerous alien threat across the settled systems. This and the Ryujin factions are probably my favorites to play through. The UC Vanguard storyline starts with a nice homage to Alien and Aliens with a bug hunt through a meatpacking factory and ends with a massive raid against a horde of powerful creatures on a frozen world. It is action-packed and throws lots of twists and turns to the player with some interesting choices for the player to make. I found the Freestar Rangers to be my least enjoyed faction. That doesn't mean it's bad, just not my cup of tea. I enjoy space westerns, but I found the story to be a bit rushed and lacking some of the big twists and turns of the UC Vanguard faction. But it does allow you to be a space cowboy hunting down bad guys across the settled systems. Oh, and it does give you a pretty nice ship in the end, so there is that. The Crimson Fleet was one of the more interesting story arcs. There are several ways to start it, from being a double agent for the UC Vanguard to an outright criminal. I think most players will probably either be volunteers for the UC, or fortunately recruited by the UC and working as a pseudo double agent. I found the Crimson Fleet to be a varied story with lots of interesting activities, and was essentially a treasure hunt for a massive treasure. The One Piece, as it were. I found it a fun ride, but there was a quest towards the end that had a pretty large difficulty spike and centered around space combat, which is not my best area of expertise. I suck at ships. I will also add that the Crimson Fleet has a lot of interesting characters to meet and betray as you will. So overall, I found the Crimson Fleet to probably right behind Pirate Ryujin and UC Vanguard. It was a very interesting story, and I really enjoyed working with the villains and the heroes. And full disclosure, I ended up siding with the UC Vanguard. I'm just a good guy at heart, so there you go. Finally, Ryujin is a mega corporation. It fulfills the Thieves Guild role of Starfield, if you're familiar with that from the Elder Scrolls games. It's a fun storyline focused on sabotage, persuasion, and overall stealth abilities. You're pushed to avoid violence to get the best rewards and outcomes. I will add that stealth in this game is not the best, and that it could do with some improvements, but with space magic, and yes, there is space magic, which is tied to the artifacts, I was able to breeze through the missions for the most part. And again, I found the region ones to be fun with some interesting characters to work with, and you do kind of get to start to care about who you're working with, which I think is something that's missing from the Freestar Rangers questline. You don't really get to know really anyone, you're just kind of popping around and just hunting people, so I think that's why I didn't really mesh with the Freestar Rangers, but it was a fun quest overall, I suppose. Right off the top, for a Bethesda game, it has very little show-stopping bugs. I've had the occasional crash, but most issues tend to deal with NPCs moving to trigger events. Otherwise, the game's pretty smooth and very playable. I found the combats to be enjoyable, though the enemies tend to err on the side of bullet sponge at higher difficulties and higher levels. Enemy AI is satisfactory. It's a bit dumb at times, but at higher difficulties it's also laser accurate and can destroy from across the map in the darkness while I'm still trying to find them. So yeah. Players and enemies have excellent mobility thanks to being able to jump or utilize boost packs, and at higher difficulties, incoming damage being very high, often one-shotting my level 50 plus character if I'm not careful at higher difficulties. Combat is solid, but the stealth gameplay is lacking. It just feels much harder than it was in say Skyrim or Fallout. By the way, a pro tip, take off your spacesuit and helmet if possible, as it helps in being stealthy. Of course, if you have access to space magic, which tends to happen about mid-game for the main story, then you can get one that basically makes you invisible for a short time, which makes stealth super easy. But otherwise, stealth gameplay is kind of hit or miss. It's probably best for just like being a stealth archer, a stealth sniper at this point, if you really want to build it up pretty quickly. Skills are earned at the rate of 1 per level, and is in tiers, meaning that you need to spend a certain amount of points for the first tier to unlock the next tier, and so on and so forth. But there's an added wrinkle that every skill rank, besides the final rank, 4 in total, has a challenge associated with it. So for, say, stealth, you need to complete 10 sneak attacks to unlock the second rank. Or for, say, persuasion, you need to pass 5 persuasion checks, as in the whole persuasion minigame, successfully before you can invest the next point into it. So it does make building your character a little more difficult, because you are, well, not so much difficult, but it's a little more varied, because you can't just beeline points into what you want. You have to make sure you select the skill, then complete the challenge associated with the skill, and then you can select it. So you may have some skills that are harder to complete than others, which is why I sometimes recommend to get certain skills earlier in game than later in game, because they're easier to complete, such as like security or space piloting, so that you don't have to do that task later in the game, where it's going to be much harder than if you were doing it earlier and you're doing it just as part of normal play. Ship combat is fun, if a bit difficult to grasp. Make sure to invest in ship parts, and if you want to be really good at it, make sure to invest in the skills focused around ship combat and building ships, so you can upgrade and build a powerful craft. The ship construction system is very versatile, and a basic search can build all kinds of awesome designs and ships that one can build. Definitely a highlight of the game, even if I only dabbled with it a bit to upgrade my ships to be more effective in combat. This is one area that I didn't get into as much, but I did enjoy it. Building your ship, modifying it is very deep system. Like, you can build all kinds of ships, all kinds of orientations. There are some limitations that they have, such as you can't have more than one reactor in it. It can only be so large, it can only be so small. It has to have certain minimum pieces to be considered a ship. But once you kind of grasp that, I've seen designs that look like a gun. I've seen designs that look like the Normandy, Battlestar Galactica. I mean, people built Death Star, not Death Stars, but I know they've built, maybe someone's built the Death Star, but I know for sure someone has made a Star Destroyer in it, if you're familiar with Star Wars. So, yeah, it's an awesome and very robust system, and I highly recommend it. It's definitely one of the higher points of the game, so don't sleep on that. And in actuality, for some quests, I would definitely, like, if you want to be a pirate, you're going to definitely want to modify and build your own ship. So that's going to be easier for you to go around and, say, pirate the people by using certain weapons that will disable ships instead of destroying them outright. So, yeah. Definitely get into shipbuilding. It's always a good time. You can get lost in it for hours trying to build the perfect ship. Starfield is a pretty game. The characters on the whole and conversations look very nice, though there are the usual Bethesda shenanigans with facial expressions often give the impression of Uncanny Valley, but often very good. Not as smooth or as dynamic as, say, Cyberpunk 2077, which I think has some awesome first-person conversations and interactions. You're often talking on the move, or they're seated and they're doing things, or typing and stuff like that. It's just very natural. It's something that Cyberpunk 2077 does very well. If you're not familiar with that, just take a few look at some videos. I'm sure you'll be able to see some conversations in there where it just seems much more natural and fluid than it does in Starfield or other Bethesda games. In Starfield, it tends to just focus on their upper body and face, and most movies tend to be head bobbles and nods, which can come off as odd and unsettling in some conversations, but not terrible. It's just, it can be a little excessive. Their heads kind of bobble too much, or they're canting their head a little bit. It just seems a little weird. Like, if you were to talk to someone that was doing it in real life, you'd be like, what is wrong with you? Or are you having a stroke? But it's fine for the game. The NASA punk style is actually pretty nice and functional. It gives a nice recurring aesthetic throughout the subtle systems. The bulkheads, eternal modular design is growing on me, and I really like it, and it clashes with the style that you encounter when you start exploring the artifacts and structures attached to them. The game is beautiful. From walking around the planets to seeing the night skies, different planets, skylines, just flying through space. The ships look fantastic. So much detail. It's a beautiful game. It's beautiful. The game is beautiful, and I like the artwork, and it keeps drawing me in. Though I will agree, many of the spacesuits are super bulky, but fitting for what they are. So yeah, the armor that you get, which is specifically spacesuits, a lot of them do tend to be very bulky, very big, and I know some people want more skin tight, or more kind of a more armored aesthetic, but you do get that later on, and that's all spoiler stuff, so I'll get to that later. The alien creatures are varied, which I was quite impressed with. There's a lot of different kinds. You will probably hit some recurring monsters, but there are a lot of different varied creatures across the many subtle systems, from the grotesque to strange and beautiful, and everything in between. The messages can be hit or miss, and yes, there is that crazy bug-eyed people. Of course, you know the ones. So, is Starfield a good game? I think so, yes. I'm going to posit this with the, I guess I need to explain it. Alright, I know that there's like a lot of controversy around the game. I know there's a lot of people like, I hate this game, it's more boring. You can't fly directly from the planet into space, blah blah blah. Like, I've never played other games, like, I guess, Star Citizen, or I've never played any of those other space sims. And I think the first thing is that I don't think this game ever set out to be a space sim. Yeah, there is space combat, you do fly around the ship and stuff like that. But it was always going to be pretty ground-based, and like you were going to be on planets. Most of the action is going to happen on planets. You're going to interact with people that are on planets, sometimes in space. But a lot of the action is on various planets or in space stations or something like that. I can agree that there might be a lot of load screens, although I've gotten to a point now where I've kind of got my flow where I only ever have maybe one load screen from one place to another. If you use the quests and you select your quest and you select, there's a button that allows you to go straight from where you're at to your quest location, boom, you're there. There's no real, having to worry about if you're at the wrong place or not. You don't have to go through, I have to go through 4, dude, you can go through, 1 if you're just doing it correctly. Just select the quest. There's a button that says, go straight here. You fast travel straight to the location of the quest, and then either you might have to land, so there might be another question, or you just land on the planet and you're ready, good to go. So, I do agree that there are a lot of load screens that can compartmentalize the story, but I didn't have a problem with that. Once I kind of figured out that flow, I zip around the galaxy just fine. I find the story to be very involving. I like where the story is. I like flying around through space. I enjoy the characters. Sarah Morgan, Andreja, Barrett. I really haven't used Sam Coe as much, but I do like the fact that he's really for the same guy that was the main character for Deus Ex. So that was kind of cool. But overall, the story's good. The story's good. The game is good. I think it's a solid game. I think that people have expectations of what it should have been. There are valid criticisms. I think that there's things that they can definitely do better with it. The AI can be a little stronger. I feel like there were some things that kind of went backwards as far as like, not really backwards, but I think like the construction for your bases can be a little more straightforward. There's a lot of stuff. It's a complex game. It's huge. There's so much you can do. And if there's one thing I can say, that there is no lack of content. If you try to do everything in this game, there is a lot of content. I would say on average to complete just the faction story arc, which is just, those are essentially side stories. Each of those main faction storylines is probably going to take you, for an average player, probably 10 to 15 hours, maybe less if you're really fast, you know what you're doing, but probably about 10 to 15 hours per story arc if you're just doing them. And that's if you're just pounding them out. Maybe less. Like if you're really good, you can probably pound through them a little bit faster. But if you're going through as an average player and you're just listening to the conversations and trying to get things done, I'm guessing you got about 10 hours for story arc. There's about 4 stories. That's about 40 hours there. The main story can be probably knocked out in another 10, 15 hours, if not that. And there are so many side stories, so much exploration, so many things to distract you, that it is a good game. Is it the best game? I don't know if I couldn't say. But it is, I would say, a good game to play. I would highly recommend it if you enjoy space. If you like the Bethesda style of storytelling. I know some people said it's a little dated. I think it could use some updating. I definitely, like I said earlier, I think they could take a page from like Cyberpunk 2077 and how they did a lot of their first person conversations, which were far more dynamic. You can have players that are seated, walking around, doing things, and it feels natural. It doesn't feel like this where sometimes they're just kind of standing there and like the only thing that moves is their heads and their upper bodies, and it can get really, you get that Bethesda jank going on with the conversations. It's funny when like if you get them with their back to you, because they don't even turn around, they just stand there and talk to you over their shoulder, and they try to turn you as best they can, but they can't because they are stuck. So that is kind of like one of the big things I think they can work on is their presentation of storytelling. But the characters are cool. There's a lot of interesting characters to meet throughout the galaxy. There is a lot to do. There is so much content. There's content associated with exploration. There's content associated with just going different places. Now, a lot of it's kind of Radiant style. You find that some of it's just like it'll generate a mining place that's abandoned. You go through and you go murder like a bunch of ecliptic mercenaries or some cultists or pirates or something like that. That stuff, I mean, it's basic Bethesda, Skyrim, Fallout, Radiant Quest style stuff. It just never ends, which is fine. But the stuff that's actually handcrafted is really good. It's solid, it's good. There's some great set pieces, great places to go see, talk to, and I've had a lot of fun with this game. I wouldn't have put 170-ish hours into this game if it wasn't fun. So I can say that for sure, this game is fun. And this is the kind of game that's going to be a large platform for a long time. I can already see that this modding scene for this, which is something that's important to me because I love mods. I love modding like Skyrim and Fallout. And I already have this game somewhat modded. I can see the modding scene for this going to be fantastic. There's so much stuff that they can tap into that when the creation engine for this comes out, it's going to be crazy. So there's also that. Now, I'm not saying that mods need to fix what's wrong with the game. And in fact, I don't really look to mods to do that. I kind of look to mods to extend the game, add things that they just haven't thought about adding or doing. And I find that's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for them to fix the game. So there's my first assessment of things right there. Just a brief warning that this next section will have spoilers. So if you don't want to see that, go ahead and check out now. Otherwise, there will be spoilers in about 5 seconds. Okay, so if you're still here, we're going to get into the end game and New Game Plus, which means I have to talk about the main story some more. So as I mentioned before, the main story is going around searching for artifacts. These artifacts are relics that are tied to what you come to realize are known as the Starborn. You meet the Starborn throughout the game. You can meet them as early as the very start of the game. In fact, if you go to the starting, I guess, cantinas or bars or whatever, you can meet the hunter. He's there in his armor. I remember meeting him in my first playthrough. I only realized this because I saw someone playing it, and I was like, oh wait, that's the hunter. And the hunter is a major character that you're going to meet throughout the storyline, but you can meet them fairly early on. They have very unique armor. They stand out completely. So it's not hard to see, like, oh, whoa, this character is this. But you don't really know who they are at that point. But anyway, the artifacts and everything else are tied to the Starborn. These are people who have collected all the artifacts and have used it to go to a place called Unity, which is the ultimate goal of the game. Once you get to Unity, then from there you can transcend this universe and go to another universe. When you go to another universe, that starts the New Game Plus. What happens when you go to another universe? As you lose everything as far as like your gear, your ships, any bases you have built, any relationships you may have had in this universe, they're all gone. You start in a new universe, you start with some gear, starting gear for the Starborn and a new ship, but otherwise, and you're the same person, so you still keep like your skills, you still keep any abilities you had. You keep anything that's intrinsic to your character, but you don't keep any gear. So you keep your levels, obviously, your skills you've unlocked, and stuff like that. But you don't get anything else that could be considered equipment. You have to go and regain all that all over again. And you can play, and you start again in the universe. You're in a new universe now. So you can say that the game is kind of like a loop. You start off at the start of the game where you first picked up the first relic. But now you are a Starborn, and you have your own ship. And when you get to Constellation, which is, where you normally would start the game, you'll meet Sarah Morgan, and you will have a chance to tell her, like, look, I don't care, or like, I'm not doing your whole storyline again. I already know how this happens, how this ends, and you can start an abbreviated version of the main story arc. So instead of having to follow through the whole main story, you just tell them, hey, I know what's going on. It kind of blacks out, fades back in, and basically instead of them, going through all these missions and stuff like that, they will just give you kind of like these Radiant mission style tasks to go here, there, and everywhere to pick up certain artifacts they haven't gotten yet, to go to the temples to get your powers, and you can actually probably clear the game in about a couple hours if you really wanted to, if you're just going to go gung-ho on that and not have to worry about it and complete it and to jump to the next universe. And each time you do this, you jump to another universe, and technically it's a new universe and you can start over again. One of the interesting things about this is that any quests that you have completed, it's possible that you may get new conversations choices based on the fact that you are Starborn. It's not just the main quest. So it can be side quests you've completed. I even got one for one of the fashion quests. I completed one of them, and I was able to make to basically bypass a whole chunk of the mission by just going, I already know what's going on here, boom, and you can just say it, and like you don't have to like try to like. There's a part in the EC quest line I remember where you have to like convince this council to give you access to some people. You can just tell them this is fated to happen. It's going to happen. You're going to give it to me. You just don't know it yet. And then they're like, yeah, we are going to allow you. And you skip a lot of the having to convince them, and you just go straight to it. So being Starborn does give you some new interactions, new story stuff you can do with the characters. So it kind of encourages you to go and play new stuff all over again. I know some may not like the idea of having to lose all their stuff essentially, and you only really keep your skills and your level and just anything intrinsic to your character. But that's all part of New Game Plus. I find it to be pretty cool. I've done New Game Plus twice now. The first time I did it, I did the abbreviated version. I told Constellation, hey, I'm not who you think I am. I'm Starborn. I've already done this. I know what's going to happen. And then they just give you the artifacts that you need. And from there, you start to, and there's new conversations to be had. Certain people are kind of wary around you because you're not who you think they are. Like say you had a relationship with Sarah, she'll just straight up say like, I'm not the Sarah you knew, let's not get too close, just I'm here to help you, I'm dedicated to that. Now I'm sure you can probably still rekindle relationships with them, but they do start out, some of them do start off as wary. Barrett was all in 100%, so I mean different characters, different reactions to it. So there is that. And again, like I said, you get new Starborn conversations. So in your conversations, you'll see something that just says Starborn and then whatever you're going to say. And that's kind of cool too, because you can use that to be kind of enigmatic, like you already know what's going to happen. Now, you don't have to do the abbreviated story arc. On my third one, which is I'm working on right now, I decided to do the full story again, and you do get more Starborn stuff with that. You can go meet certain characters, have conversations with them, let them know that you know what's going on, and they'll kind of, you know, wink and nod and know that it's very interesting. It's definitely very interesting. It's really cool. I'm excited to see what other changes are going on. I actually did it again because I wanted to go. I didn't do my first playthrough when I completed it. I did not complete all the faction story arcs. I only completed the UC Vanguard one, and so I went back and I made sure to do all the rest of them. So that way, the next time I do New Game Plus, I can see what if there's any other Starborn conversations for those. I definitely know that there are some throughout the game, and like I said, it's not just like the main quest line. Any quest you've done has a possibility to have a Starborn response to it if they put it in there. So I was quite surprised that some of those quests just allow you to just say some cool stuff. With that said, do I think everyone will like New Game Plus? It really depends. If you're kind of a completionist and you just want to level up your character and be as powerful as you want to be and get all the space magic and maximize it, then yes, you probably will do New Game Plus several times. If you're the kind of player that likes to dabble and try new things and make brand new characters, which is a common staple of Bethesda games, especially like Fallout or Skyrim, where you want to try a totally different build, I can see New Game Plus being not as enticing. And you don't have to do it, but that is the end game. Like, you complete the game when you finally go to Unity, but you don't, even when you go to Unity, you can back up and leave and then and just stay in the universe you're in. So you don't have to go to it, but the game is kind of designed around it. I think there is no level cap as far as I know. I think I saw a video where it said like theoretically I think it goes like level 12,000 or something like that, and they just couldn't level up anymore after that. So, but I mean, getting even to level 100 is pretty intense. Like, I just reached level 50, and I'm not really trying to level. So I guess if I was like focusing on leveling, then there's probably easier ways to do it. I'm just kind of playing the game as it goes. It does slow down a lot. You don't level up as often once you get to the 40s and 50s and stuff like that. But
We can be so stubborn.
will people enjoy it? It really comes down to what kind of player you are. I like the way the New Game Plus is integrated into the game world. It raises a lot of questions on how that will work if there probably will be a sequel at some point to Starfield due to its critical success so far. I'm kind of interested to see how they're going to incorporate that. I'm interested to see how they incorporate New Game Plus into a lot of the expansions. I'm sure they're not expansions, but DLCs that they're going to come out with for this. Obviously, since you're basically stuck in a loop of the main game, it doesn't really matter where they put it because you can still play it either as a normal character as New Game Plus. I wonder if they'll go back and add more content specifically for New Game Plus, if only because I think it is a big appeal, and I think a lot of people will probably play it because it's there and they can progress. So it would be nice to see newer content. I think that's the only thing that's missing with New Game, is that New Game Plus does have more content, but it would be nice to have content geared just for those players who have already completed the loop at least once. I think that'd be interesting to add more stuff. Obviously, just need more explanation of the Starborn, and I actually want to do a video on them in the near future. But overall, I really do like the end game. I'm really enjoying it. I like the implementation of New Game Plus, and I'm eager to see what's going on. So, I think that's it in a nutshell. Basically, I like Starfield. I know it's not perfect. I know some people are like, hey, how can you play this game? This game is horrible. I think it's fine. I've put a lot of hours into it, and I've enjoyed just about every minute of it. I know that there are critical problems with it. I don't need a perfect game. I don't believe that there is a perfect game. But I do think that Starfield is worth the money. I mean, content-wise, there is so much of it. And if you really enjoy the Bethesda style, you'll get sucked right in. I can see where it might not be for everyone, and I can see how if you may not enjoy certain aspects of it, or you wanted it to be more seamless and not have as many load screens, that might be a bother, and then don't get it. But I think it's worth the money. It's worth checking out. If you like RPGs, if you like open world style games, it's definitely fun. It's got a lot of potential. and I really do believe the modding scene will be very explosive for this game. And I think there's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of content, easily by far. With all this, just the faction stories and main story, you're looking at like easily 30 hours of work, and you don't have to even do them all. You can just do one or two. So, and depending on what you might latch on to shipbuilding, might become your thing. You might latch into base building, that might be your thing. You might just want to just make your characters as powerful as they can be. That's also fun. So there's a lot of different aspects. It's a very complex game. There's secrets everywhere. There's quests everywhere. There's content everywhere. It's an endless game, obviously with the Radiant style quests, but even with just the created content, there's a lot of it in there. So I definitely say it's worth a shot. But if you've already decided for yourself, maybe you hate Bethesda, you just want to hate on it, that's fine. But it's a good game. And that's all I got to say about it. And that's it for Dapper Dog. So I'm out. And if you've enjoyed this content, please subscribe. I've been kind of slow lately. I've been sick and just a lot of stuff going on. But I'm hoping to get back into my grind and push it out. I know I've fallen behind a little bit on my Crusader Kings 3 run, but I have been recording for it. I just have not been editing it. So I need to go and get that done. I've got lots of content done for the Like and Conquest stuff. So that's going to get done. And I need to get going on my Halloween playthrough, which I'm working on as we speak. Alright, that's it. I'm out. Starfield's good. See ya. Bye.